Kings of Hali 7. One of, if not, Atlantic Canada's most premier tournaments. I traveled across the country for this tournament, but rather than just making it a vlog trip, I'll share some of the details of how I prepared and kept focus for the event. Despite preparing in an unusual way, I felt like I played pretty close to my best. Here's how I won Kings of Hali. So, how did I end up going to this event at all? The event's held in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is on the very east side of Canada. Where I'm from, Edmonton, is about 3,600 kilometers away, or 2,200-ish miles. So it's actually quite far away. It's literally across the country. It's the farthest I've ever traveled for an event. So why was I going this way? Well, to be honest, I wouldn't have even considered it for this year if I wasn't invited by some of the TOs. Cal invited me, reached out to me, basically asked if I was interested, and it presented an opportunity for an event that I was thinking about going to at some point. I'd heard of Kings of Hali, I did want to go to one at some point, but I wasn't sure when that was going to be. The TOs were really friendly to me, they helped set up a plan that worked for me. Another reason I was also able to make it out for the trip was thanks to the support from my team Time and Heart. Big shoutouts to them for letting me come out to this sort of event, because it's hard to travel frequently, and this was an opportunity I did want to take, and they were willing to give me that chance. So thank you, I appreciate it, and glad to be a part of the team. What's nice about this sort of trip is that it also would give me a chance to play some of Atlantic Canada's better players, because I'd never played them before, and so this was the best time to visit and play. There were Nova Scotia players I had heard of before, such as Moo and Vapor, and I knew about Light from New Brunswick as well, but there were a lot of players who I hadn't really heard of or didn't really know enough about their play to come to any sort of conclusion. So this is the best opportunity to really get to play people and get a feel for what the Atlantic Canada scene was like. So, did I practice? Did I VOD review? No. You might find that a little bit weird, but I did prep in a different way. That isn't to say don't practice or prep. The reason that I didn't do it myself was because I wasn't feeling rusty in my play. For me, I felt like I was already playing pretty well for the last while, and as a result, I don't necessarily need the practice or upkeep in the same manner that some other players might need to. That's at least how I've noticed it for myself. What I did instead for this tournament is I worked on my mental. The idea is to think about what I wanted to accomplish going for this event and what would make the trip fulfilling. Because for my personal goal with Smash, my current goal is not necessarily to win everything, right? Or to try and even make big wins at all. The idea that I have right now and what motivates me to play Smash is to express my competitive side, basically the existence that in me is a desire to compete. And so winning would be really nice, but I've never played any of the top seeds. I have no idea if they're just going to destroy me. So I'm not going to assume anything of my performance. Instead, I'm just going to do my best, going to make sure that I stay focused and dialed in for each set and see what happens. I want to fight these people, and I want to see how strong they are. Whatever happens after that happens. Whenever an important tournament comes up, there are doubts that enter our minds, and I'm not an exception to this. A lot of times we'll end up sort of thinking about whether we'll live up to the expectations that we set for ourselves, or if, for example, the event or trip is just going to be a waste of time and money. Are we going to make the most of it, or are we going to find ourselves coming up short and kind of almost regretting having entered? And it's not to speak anything of the event itself. The event could run very fantastic. It could be an awesome thing. But it's our own sort of expectations that can bring things down, bring down our experience. What's important is to silence these doubts and to really just make sure that that's not a major focus. I don't look into my bracket paths too hard usually, but at the least, I'll usually look into who I'm expected to fight based on seeding. So, who might my opponents be this tournament? If the seeding went exactly as planned, in Winners Semis, Cake would be my opponent, and Not Brayden would be my opponent in Winners Finals. Before these rounds, there are other players, like Croy and Catalyst, who I knew were solid in the Maritimes, but they were players I wasn't familiar with myself. And if I was to play any of these players, I'd actually have to get to that point in bracket. Every set is a test to see if I can move on. Don't take anything for granted, and that's why I don't like to treat those matches as guaranteed. There's every possibility that I could just get sent to losers or get knocked out of the bracket, period, before it even happens. The same thing could happen to them as well, too. just because I'm seeded to play against someone doesn't mean that both of us will, I guess, hold up our end of the bargain, so to speak. I'll just try and make sure that I go as far as I possibly can, try and stay in winners or the bracket in general. There were other players who weren't expected to fight me, but were potentially possible. Someone like Moo and Vapor, who were both seeds 3 and 5. So there's a chance that they might be able to make an upset and get in a path that has them fighting me too. So I arrived in Halifax on Thursday, just in time for the pre-local. I basically had to race there immediately out of the airport. And what was nice about it is it actually let me play Moo and Vapor right away. I basically was able to play them the day that I arrived, so kind of checked off a box off the list of something that I set out to do. And those sets gave me a good idea of what to expect from them, because yeah, they did have the ability to beat me in sets, and if I wanted to win this weekend, I'd have to make sure that I brought my A game. If we did play in the main event, I'd learn my outcome once we had played our set. Thinking about anything more than that could give me false confidence, or it could give me a sense of fear. I mean, after all, if they can't beat me, then what if they beat me, right? But it's not worth going that far. After Thursday came Friday, which was doubles. I teamed with Pink Bombo from Saskatchewan, and he'd come along with a little crew from Saskatchewan, actually. We were able to take doubles, which crossed off one of my 2 events, but the main event, singles, was still to come. So I was going to have to make sure that I was playing at my best on Saturday, which was my pool day. On Saturday, I played my pools. Unfortunately, the matches weren't streamed, but I cleared through my pool and entered top 64 on winner's side. My pool actually started at around 2:30 p.m., so I actually filled a lot of the day exploring Halifax, the city itself. Some people would use this time to practice more, get more games in, keep warm. But for me, my exploring's a mix of both genuine curiosity of the place, because I'd never been there before, and also achieving one of the goals I set out to accomplish on the trip, which was enjoying the weekend. To have a fulfilling trip, enjoying it is also a very important aspect, and it takes off the pressure of having to perform too. Sometimes we'll almost equate the value of our trip off of how well we did in bracket. We sort of start to prioritize one specific aspect when there are so many other aspects that make up a trip. And so, even if you didn't have the best performance at a tournament out of region, if you enjoyed the trip, then is it still not a worthwhile one? Now, I mentioned earlier that I wasn't openly concerned about performing my seed and winning the tournament, but sometimes these expectations can kind of lie under the surface, and despite us not having that be a focus, it kind of eats away at us. So exploring around and having some fun with it quiets and distracts me from the underlying thoughts. I always really like water, so the waterfront was a classic, but I went all over the place, did a lot of walking. Crew battles happened at the end of the night, which was a 6v6 crew battle of the world against Atlantic Canada, so the world being many of the invaders, and I was the last player sent out for the world. I actually dropped 2 stocks to Sea Salt, who did a very good job putting me in a bad spot to face Moo, and in the end I wasn't able to bring things back, but that's how it goes sometimes, right? It was a fun crew battle, and it was a reminder to make sure to work hard in every single set this weekend. Otherwise, there were definitely players capable of taking sets over. Sunday began finals day. My first match was against Bashmo, the Snake main from Ottawa. I was able to close out a 3-0, putting me in winner's quarters against Croy, a banjo from Nova Scotia.
We've seen Croy on stream earlier against Catalyst, but I wonder how versed he is in the pit matchup.
My slot in top 8 winners side was guaranteed. I spent some time getting ready for top 8 by eating about an hour before I was needed. I found that when I have food and I'm digesting it, it kind of slows me down in bracket. I like to try and give myself a little bit of time, at least an hour. Otherwise, if I don't have enough time, then I just won't eat. But sometimes if you starve yourself out for a little bit too long, that can have its own impact on your focus and ability. But found a bit of a sweet spot, was able to take care of it, and come back to the venue ready for top 8. My winner's semis match was against Hanad the Ike, and I was actually supposed to play Cake, but he got upset by Hanad. Fortunately for me, Ike is a matchup that I have an enormous amount of experience in. Probably my second most played matchup, but Hanad kept it pretty close.
Ledge so that it has to bounce off because it's too high.
I was gonna say, like, edge guarding has not been a factor this game for Hanad at all. But just the way he forces him to do a bad recovery.
On the other side of winners, Not Braden and Moo had a close set, resulting in a 3-2 for Not Braden. So, looks like I was going to play Braden after all. Now, I should take a second to mention that I was wearing earbuds for most of the tournament. Normally, I'm someone who can play in all sorts of conditions, even no game sound, but the truth is, I was battling my own set of nerves. I've talked about it a little bit so far in this video. One aspect that becomes a huge factor when you travel out of region is when crowds cheer for their hometown heroes or for their crew. It's a major distraction, but it's also an expected distraction. It's only fair that they do cheer for them after all. So I had the sound to not only drown out that potential, but to keep me in the mood of competing at my fiercest. Sometimes I'll use game sound instead, but I used audio here. I think music actually might help me a little bit more with that. I'm not infallible. I'm just as capable of failing under pressure, the same as anybody else. So my earbuds are what I use to keep the pressure at bay for the entire weekend.
Crazy Darren!
Oh my god, but reacts with the DI properly. This is suddenly anybody's game.
Yeah, huge rage on
Oh my
Brandon!
god!
Spot dodge, up smash.
That's
He's been
the
doing
day
it since
one.
Smash 4. That's
Wow.
the day negative one,
Yeah.
bro. Since Smash 4.
back air. Okay.
Picks the aggression at the right time, but you can't get grabbed in the corner. You can't
Silver
get up
has
there.
been so composed. It's going to be a great backdoor opportunity.
Oh, and he's been...
Oh my god, Porto!
Yeah,
Gonna be it.
and that'll do it.
Crazy game 5, but Silver in control.
It was a close set, but I pulled through. I tried hard to avoid any ladder setups, but Braden is very good at them. A factor in this matchup is Cape edge guards, and while I was mostly successful, I did get hit by one, but I limited him to taking stocks through other means. At this point, one more set stood between me and the tournament. Braden battled back, defeating Moo for a second time to face me yet again.
Okay, good reactions.
Wow.
And that's going to do it.
Unbelievable bait. Shoots the arrow up.
And
Mind Melter.
yeah, and TXH Silver is your Kings of Hali 7 champion.
Bracket was over. It was a much more convincing set for me this time around, and part of it was due to me catching a lot of approaches set up using Fireball as cover. In the Pit Mario matchup, my Nair eats up the Fireball while also staying active, so it means that I can punish one of the main setups Mario has to approach, and it's a punish that's very easy to do. Moreover, I started to hit dares at ledge, which I was trying to sour spot intentionally because the position it sends the opponent at makes it easy enough to hit them away again, and if I do hit them, they're not likely to make it back for the next recovery. So those are some of the methods that I used to help keep my focus, make sure that I was prepared to take the event. I really focused on a mental side, making sure that I was able to stay focused and play at my best. It's not easy to dispel all the doubts. What I find works best for me is to dispel all distractions that I can and remind myself why I'm playing. If I'm here to compete at my best, I want to make sure that that's the part of me that my opponent has to fight. And that's something that I want to be able to reflect upon once the event is over to see, did I actually succeed at that? If I didn't, why not? This event was a C tier. It was very close to a B tier, but just short. And it's my second C tier win, so it's a decently stacked tournament to have gone to and won. In some aspects, because I'm first seed, it won't feel as satisfying, let's say, right? But at the end of the day, like I said, there are lots of people who could take sets off of me there, and you still have to beat quite a few good players to come out on top. There are many levels that I still need to go up to become an even better player. There's so many good players out there, and so many players that would knock my socks off. So many players that would clobber me in bracket, and some of my performances at very large tournaments have spoken to that effect, in that maybe there's some underperforming in my seed, or not having any sort of answer for the matchup that I'm playing. But for this tournament, it worked out, and I'm really glad that I was able to come out for it. It was a lot of fun. I'm really glad that I got to get a good feel for what the Atlantic Canada scene is like, and I do want to go back again at some point. So we'll see when that happens, but for now, that'll be it for today's video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.